There are moments in baseball that stop everything. Moments where the crowd goes silent. Where players freeze. Where managers step out of dugouts not because the rulebook tells them to, but because something has happened that demands an immediate human response. What occurred on that mound in the past 24 hours was one of those moments. And the reverberations from it have not stopped spreading since the final pitch landed. A Korean pitcher, already carrying the weight of a suspension, already operating under the intense scrutiny that comes with being on the wrong side of baseball's disciplinary process, deliberately threw at Shohei Ohtani. Not a pitch that slipped. Not a fastball that ran inside further than intended. According to every source present at that game, every analyst who has reviewed the footage, and every person sitting in that dugout when it happened, this was intentional. This was an attack. And what happened next stunned the entire baseball world in ways that nobody, not the managers, not the umpires, not the millions of people watching, could have possibly anticipated. To understand the full weight of what happened, it is necessary to understand the context that surrounded that at-bat. The Korean pitcher in question had already served a suspension earlier this season. The details of that suspension had been widely covered. The circumstances that led to it had drawn significant criticism from within the baseball community. And when he returned to the mound, there was an understanding, stated publicly by league officials and understood privately by everyone in the sport, that his behavior going forward would be watched with the kind of scrutiny reserved for players who have already demonstrated a willingness to cross lines. That context made what he did even more shocking. Because when Shohei Ohtani stepped into the batter's box, the pitcher did not hesitate. According to multiple sources who were watching from the dugout and from the stands, the body language on that mound changed the moment Ohtani was announced. Something shifted. Something that the most experienced baseball minds present recognized immediately, even before the pitch was thrown. And then it was thrown. The baseball traveled with purpose. Not toward the strike zone. Not toward any location that could be explained by command issues or mechanical problems. It traveled directly at Ohtani, and it connected. The crack of the ball against Ohtani's body silenced the stadium instantly. For one complete second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. And then everything happened at once. According to multiple inside sources, the Dodgers dugout reacted before the umpires had even issued their first warning. Players who had been sitting calmly moments before were on their feet and moving toward the field with a speed and urgency that communicated exactly how the entire team had interpreted what they had just witnessed. This was not the cautious, restrained movement of players who were uncertain about what had happened. This was the movement of men who had no uncertainty whatsoever. They had seen it. They knew what it was. And they were not going to stand in that dugout and pretend otherwise. According to those present, the scene on the field in the moments that followed was one of the most intense anyone in attendance had witnessed this season. Multiple players from both sides were involved in confrontations that required umpires and coaches to physically intervene. Voices were raised. Words were exchanged that multiple sources described as some of the most heated they had heard on a baseball field in years. But at the center of all of it, standing completely still while chaos erupted around him, was Shohei Ohtani. And what Ohtani did in that moment is what stunned everyone the most. According to multiple sources who had a direct line of sight to Ohtani in the seconds after the pitch connected, his initial reaction was not what anyone expected. He did not charge the mound. He did not scream. He did not gesture toward the pitcher or invite further confrontation. He stood in that batter's box, absorbing the pain, absorbing the moment, absorbing the full meaning of what had just been done to him, and he was completely, utterly still. That stillness, according to those who witnessed it, was more powerful than any eruption could have been. Because it communicated something that words could not. It communicated that Shohei Ohtani understood exactly what had happened. That he had no confusion about the intent behind that pitch. And that his response to it was going to be something far more consequential than a mound charge or a shouting match. But then the stillness broke. According to multiple sources present at the game, Ohtani turned, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly at the pitcher. And what his face communicated in that moment, according to everyone who saw it, was something that sent a visible ripple through both dugouts, through the umpiring crew, and through the thousands of people watching from the stands. It was not rage. It was not distress. It was not the expression of a man who had been broken by what had just happened to him. It was something far more unsettling than any of those things. It was the expression of a man who had made a decision. Several veteran players present, men who have spent decades in professional baseball and have seen confrontations of every possible variety, reportedly described Ohtani's expression in that moment as one of the most intense things they had witnessed on a baseball field. Not because of its volume, but because of its absolute, complete, terrifying calm. One source said simply, that look made everyone on that field understand that something was going to happen. They just didn't know when. In the hours following the incident, as the baseball world processed what it had witnessed, a voice entered the conversation that elevated the story to an entirely different level. A legend of the sport, a figure whose career accomplishments and standing within the baseball community place his words in a category that demands attention, publicly responded to what had happened in terms that immediately spread across every platform, every broadcast, and every corner of the sport. According to multiple sources familiar with the statement, the legend did not mince words. He did not offer the measured, diplomatic language that public figures typically deploy when addressing sensitive situations. He spoke with a directness and a fury that reflected both his respect for Ohtani and his complete contempt for what the Korean pitcher had done. He called the pitch exactly what it was. Deliberate. Cowardly. Beneath the standards of professional baseball. And he stated, without any ambiguity, that the pitcher's history, the suspension, the pattern of behavior, the repeated willingness to operate outside the boundaries of the sport's unwritten and written rules, made this incident not a surprise but an inevitability. According to those who heard the statement in full, the legend went further than anyone expected him to go publicly. He reportedly called on the league to respond with the maximum possible disciplinary force. He stated that a suspension already on a player's record should have been treated as a final warning, and that what happened against Ohtani proved that the warning had not been taken seriously. He then said something that stopped every person listening. He said that if the league failed to respond to this with the severity it deserved, if the punishment did not match the gravity of a deliberate attack on the sport's most important and most visible player, then baseball itself would be sending a message about whose safety it was truly committed to protecting. Those words spread through the baseball world like a fire. According to multiple sources with knowledge of the league's internal discussions, MLB officials convened an emergency review of the incident within hours of the game concluding. The review process, according to those familiar with it, was notably different from the standard protocol applied to routine hit-by-pitch situations. The footage was reviewed repeatedly. The angle, the velocity, the location, the pitcher's body language in the moments leading up to the delivery, all of it was examined with the kind of thoroughness that the league reserves for its most serious disciplinary situations. According to multiple sources, the conclusion reached by those conducting the review was not a difficult one. The pitch was intentional. The evidence supported it clearly. And given the pitcher's existing disciplinary history, the league's response would need to reflect the seriousness of a repeat offender who had now crossed into territory that endangered a fellow player. The announcement of the punishment, according to those with knowledge of the timeline, is expected imminently. And according to multiple sources familiar with the league's deliberations, the suspension being considered is significantly longer than anything the pitcher has previously received. Some sources suggest the number being discussed internally would effectively end the pitcher's season entirely. While the league conducted its review and the baseball world reacted with fury, the atmosphere inside the Dodgers clubhouse told its own story. According to multiple sources, the mood in that room following the game was one of controlled anger. Not chaos. Not panic. The kind of anger that sits quietly in the chest of professional athletes who have been trained to channel everything through competition, but who have not yet had the opportunity to compete in response to what they just witnessed. Dave Roberts addressed the team. According to those present, his message was measured but unmistakably firm. He told his players that what had happened was unacceptable. That the organization would pursue every available avenue to ensure it was addressed appropriately. And that the best response, the only response that would truly matter in the end, was the one delivered on the field. According to multiple sources, when Roberts finished speaking, one player stood up. Ohtani. He did not speak for long. According to those who heard him, he said very little. But what he said, delivered in the same quiet, complete calm that had defined his reaction on the field, immediately changed the energy in that room. He said he was fine. He said he was ready. And he said that whoever they faced next would see exactly how he responded to what had been done to him. The room erupted. Not in words. In the kind of collective, unified energy that coaches spend entire careers trying to create, and that only arrives naturally in moments like this one. In moments when a team stops being a collection of individual players and becomes something that moves and breathes as one. The Dodgers are angry. They are focused. And they are ready. The Korean pitcher faces a punishment that could define the remainder of his professional career. The league is under pressure, from legends, from players, from the watching public, to respond with a severity that matches the gravity of what occurred. And Shohei Ohtani, once again, has demonstrated to the entire baseball world exactly why he is different from every other player in the sport. Not because of what he does with a bat or a ball. But because of who he is when the moment demands the most from him. He was attacked on that field. In front of thousands of people. In front of the entire watching world. And his response was calm. Focused. And more frightening to his opponents than any eruption could ever have been. The baseball world is watching. And Shohei Ohtani is ready to answer.